Hey everyone, I'm the Idea Maker, and today I'm going to be giving my spoiler and non-spoiler review for Agatha All Along, Episode 4. So, this one was actually pretty interesting. As for the non-spoiler part of it, I just want to say that I'm a musical person, okay? And this one is definitely more of like a musical episode, but to a degree. The fact that they were in this 70s environment. I actually really like this one, environment wise. The plot was actually creepy. Actually, the plot was creepy on this one, like unbelievably creepy. The one thing that I do give this one is that the fact that it's more about an episode where it's the Coven is trying to, like, they're really trying to work with each other. That's what I see this as. And the more that we see these trials keep going on and everything, we get to see more of like them building trust amongst each other. And it's interesting to see that this is something that realistically you don't really see much often. And the way how I interpreted this one was that this is more of an episode of having to face your past, and in this case, you not blaming yourself for something that's happened within your family. And this goes for a lot of people, and it actually hit me a lot because, as you know, I haven't had such an easy time with things, especially because this is being released about a little more than a month after my grandmother passed away. And I think that it's such a great lesson in terms of having to deal with someone you've lost, with dealing with a situation that you feel like it's on you, like you feel like you were the reason why that things went wrong. And I have to say that I really really feel like if you feel like if the world is crumbling around you because of the fact that you don't you see that there's so much pain that you still have in your heart, this is a great episode when it comes in terms of like if you feel like you need that extra lesson of healing. Now, like I said, I'm not a person who loves horror. I'm not a person who, is easily drawn to it. But the lessons that I'm seeing in here are actually very helpful, hitting close to home. And that's something that you barely see these days because of how there's so many things that we see these days in horror that we don't really get a lesson out of horror movies and stuff like that. From the amount that I've seen, which hopefully I see a few more soon, and just trying to make my way into the way how things are. Sorry, just a little tired. Work was a little long, but I really feel like Agatha all along so far, its story, it really feels, it really is reminiscent to WandaVision in terms of that we're going through different eras, we're going through different time periods, we're going through different settings. I like the fact that, like I mentioned before, this is more of a practicality. Like this is more based off of special effects rather than just relying heavily on CGI, which is something that I really enjoy out of this show. Is the fact that there are instances where you can tell that they went above and beyond with prosthetics, with makeup, with special practical effects, and visual effects and CGI. In my opinion, we're a little bit more in this one, but I also have to say that this is a great way on being able to bring something to life and being able to move forward. And I love it. I absolutely love this feeling. I love the feeling of that you're creating something, something like how older movies used to be, where you don't rely too heavily on, probably in the day it was more of like some way of like, I don't know, like drawing in characters or something, because it was a lot more work back in the day, and now it's easier because of CGI. But I feel like with this, especially with the fact that they were pulling off some great ideas with they were shooting some scenes like if they were in the 70s, they were shooting some scenes like if they were also, doing a music video, which I really really enjoyed. I felt like you could definitely see the ideas and the moments that they had, that it was going back and forth between, the main issue, like the plot and the tone, and shifting from that to the 70s era and back. And I thought it was really cool on the fact that this was one where we get more of a backstory on Alice, and we get more of a backstory with these characters that we get to spend time with. And I really like the fact that this is a show that we're actually seeing the character progression more and more as we're watching this show. And it really does a lot of good effort on planning out a story where you actually feel like the connection is not generic, but it actually feels genuine. You actually feel like these actors are getting along with each other, and you actually feel like these characters are believable enough to bond with each other, even though that they've had many different backgrounds. And seeing how there's still some self-doubting in them, there's still some points to where they feel like they failed themselves while they failed other people. I like the fact that this is also a show about having to stand up for what you believe in and defying the odds. This is really a show about that. You're really talking about defying the odds in terms of just of breaking the stereotype. And even though that this is about more of like the female witches, I really love the fact that this is a message too, that even men could be able to take into consideration. Now, I do understand that this might not be for everybody, which it's not for me, but the lessons that I see here are, they're actually very much touching. It doesn't feel like if these it does not feel like if these lessons are forced in. It actually feels like it's a momentary thing in life, because these lessons will come to you regardless on if you want them or not. It's like how God will give us these different things, these different lessons and these different teachings at the moment that he wants for us to understand. And I like that about Agatha all along. Especially this episode, because that we're starting to really understand more about these characters. And the progression keeps building and keeps building, and it's great that it's building. And so far, nobody's died on the road besides Mrs. Hart. But I honestly think that it's great. It's honestly great that we're seeing some good progression. Now, I feel like also another thing too is that the episodes, I like the fact that they vary in length. It doesn't feel like they're taking away anything. It actually doesn't feel like they're rushing through the plot. I actually feel like it's a nice steady pace, and I actually don't feel that it's going so slow. It's actually feel like it's going quick, and I'm really happy about that. It doesn't feel like if I have to go through a rush show like Secret Invasion, and I'm happy about that, because I don't want to have another rushed show. I want these episodes to feel as lengthy as possible. I want them to feel as authentic as possible, and I'm grateful for that. So I am grateful for that. I think that the most standout here was definitely Alice. She was a standout here, and I love Lilia. And of course, I think also, I love the fact that Agatha's kind of like sidelining herself and giving these different actors and these different characters a moment to shine, and a moment for them to be able to take in the idea and like take in the whole environment through their own stories within this show. And that's what I think is it's doing really really well. especially because we never got introduced to these characters before. I mean, Lilia and Alice, Rio, which we do see Rio again, um, and Jennifer and the teen. Which, like I said, I still feel like the teen is Billy. It's got to be. It's got to be Billy. It's got to be Billy. Like, it has to be. So I do want to say that this is actually a great progression. And once we hit episode 5, this is when I feel like this is going to be like the main midpoint of the series. And I'll get more of my thoughts on the midpoint. But enough of my non-spoiler review. So let's get to the actual spoiler review of the episode. So if you do not want to see the spoiler episode until you've seen the episode, now is your chance. So I will pause the video and I will give you some time, and then I will then count down from 3 and let you guys know on when the next like what the next what's going to be said next. Right? All right. So that was the pause. So we are going to head into the spoiler review right now in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. All right. So this plot basically goes and it picks up right from the last one. Mrs. Hart is dead. So now they need an actual green witch to replace Mrs. Hart's spot. So when they do this summoning incantation to bring in a green witch, it turns out that it's Rio who gets summoned, and she joins the coven on the witch's road. And there's some conflict between her and Agatha, which it seems like it's revealed they had I think that they had some form of a relationship with each other. I'm not sure if it was like a relationship or what exactly it was, but there's something about it that it kind of gives me the vibes of they had a thing. But I have a feeling that maybe Rio isn't what she seems. I think Agatha, something about her, there was a reason why that this happened. We don't know why. Now, I might, some of you guys might be wondering, you're still continuing it because even with all these different things, look, I'm like the Bible says, like we got to love our neighbors, okay? And I want to be open-minded, and I also want to be able to not only just get to, do something in terms of the fact that this is literally a Halloween series, if you think about it, but I also want for this to be an opportunity for us to be able to step away from what we find to be what we find in general to be not the typical thing that you would experience, but take a step back, give people a chance, and consider putting God first before anything else. And then we get to discuss this like human beings. And it's not a lot of these things, especially through Agatha all along, I don't really talk about because I don't like to be in the midst of any political or any type of social commentary. I just want this to be a family friendly channel, to where that I just want it to feel as wholesome as possible. And I want it to be a place where you could be able to be as free as you want to talk about what you want. And if you have it doesn't matter what type of ideas or religion or race or culture or preference or identity that you claim to have or that you align yourself with. And this is a safe spot for where me as a YouTuber, it's a place where I want for people to be themselves. I don't want them to change who they are just because that the world tells them so. God wants us to shine brighter and bigger than those who just keep their light under a bush, and so that way the enemy won't blow it out. So continuing on with it, there's some tension between Rio and Agatha, which kind of gets everybody talking a little bit, especially because Agatha, I guess, is thinking that there's something going on with that teen, because we learn that he actually has what's known as, we learn about the sigil, but we learn more about it. So the thing is that the reason why these witches don't like to put sigils on people is because that not only will the person who receives the sigil forget, but the witch who puts the sigil on the person also forgets. But it only can be broken on its own when it's not needed, which is an interesting thing. So we don't know how long this teen, or which I'm going to say Billy because it has to be Billy, we don't know on how long it's going to take. So from there, when they're in this environment of the 70s environment, Alice is trying to avoid it as much as possible, but it comes to the point where when she can't avoid it, she ends up, the road ends up, making its path to lead it toward it. And it's funny because I thought about it like, sometimes we're so stubborn to the point that God keeps telling us, go in this direction, but we're so stubborn and we're so stupid that we think, we can. It's like how my grandmother used to say, like how it's like if you're walking throughout the door, but instead of you walking out the door, you walk into the wall, even though the door's right there. Like you're trying to avoid the problem, you're trying to run away from it because you have this trauma that you feel like this is something that it's not like a big deal or anything, but this is something that I definitely feel that is important to address, because when we do not face our fears, I believe that that's when we get some issues happening, and we cannot let that happen anymore. And we need to be able to move forward and move past the trauma and be able to look at it through a new lens, through God's eyes, saying, you will make it through without any problems. And I love the fact that this episode, when they go through the room and their environment changes, their outfits change and everything. The interesting thing about this is that we also get a little bit more of what Rio and Agatha's original plan or just like in terms of like that, Agatha's trying to change, she's trying to be better, and she's trying to see if maybe the teen is her son, which I believe is Nicholas Scratch, aka Senior Scratchy from WandaVision. And it's interesting that we get to see a lot of these different events unfold, because in that area with the 70s house, Alice is still kind of haunted by the fact that this has been a generational curse event that's been happening for a while, and that the Ballad of the Witch's Road, the version that her mom used to perform, was actually a protection which covers over, which protects the audience and protects her, and it's like a shield for her. It's like a spiritual shield. And there's this monster that's there, that's invisible, that you can't see it because of the fact that they need to play the instruments, they need to perform the ballad, because there's a record player that has it, and it starts playing on its own, then starts playing backwards, and then there's all these other different little supernatural elements to the point that it gets destroyed. And once that they get it fixed, then they find their way out, they defeat whatever creature is putting that curse on them, and they move forward. When they're moving forward and the teen is recovering because he starts to bleed all of a sudden because of his injuries, Jennifer ends up making her potion or her healing materials to work on the teen, which, like, again, I really want to call him Billy, and it works. And she has been through a lot of self-doubt. Alice has been through a lot of self-doubt as well, that she felt like she was not good enough anymore, which this is the confirmation of that this works. And while Agatha is kind of sulking around because of Rio, and keeping an eye on she's keeping an eye on him, and she doesn't want to feel guilty, because she kind of does feel guilty about it, and she starts caring about him because she thinks that maybe that's her son, maybe it's Nicholas Scratch, and who knows. But it turns out that Rio knows that that's not true, that it's not her son. And at this point, all the other witches, they're actually bonding with each other. They're actually being a group. They're actually being a coven. They're actually being there for each other. Even despite the flaws, despite the fact that, they couldn't stand each other at first, they didn't understand. why everybody was doing what they were doing. And I like the fact that, you know, nobody understood what they were doing at first until they really thought about it. They really thought this through, and they ended up making it. They ended up doing something completely different to where it ends up being something important to them. And I'm so happy about that. I really am happy of the fact that they're starting to get to know each other and feel like they're like a family, they're like friends, and they really get to take that motion into for the next trial. And I really love that. So that's the plot of it. Now, what do I personally think? I don't, like I said, I don't like supernatural elements, but I do appreciate the fact that this is about character progression. This is an episode that's more based off of character progression than it is based off of anything. There are moments of the plot which I am happy that they do provide details of the plot more in this one, and you know, it keeps progressing. But through the plot, there is a lot of character progression. I love the fact that they vitalize and use these instruments and everything for the story. Like, it actually is great that they're using this towards the story. I really am happy about that, because there's so much that they could do with this series. There's so much that they can do, and I'm glad that they're, you know, taking it a step further. I really am happy that they're taking it a step further, and they're making something different. They're using it as a tool and as a stepping stone in this path that they all need to take. And it's something vital. It is something very, very vital that they might not think at first. But they do need to progress. It's a story that I actually really, really like, in terms of the fact that these characters are, you know, real life people. They really have these problems that they want to be able to they want to move past this. They want to move past everything. They don't want to feel like they're trapped. They're people that, like us, that we don't want to feel trapped about anything anymore, and we want to keep progressing. We want to keep moving forward. We want to keep moving on. And that's what we as people need to see. We need to see that, you know, God wants us to move forward, and he wants us to use our past to give it to him so that way he can turn it into a better future. And that's what I love about this, is that this is more based off of like emotional support, mental health, and there's a lot of things out of this that I feel like, you know, our other projects in the future are going to I hope that they address a little bit more. And this is something that I hope that they, you know, keep this constant theme about, because that there's a lot of good things from here that, you know, it's just, it makes things easier and more of a easier watch for people to, you know, actually grasp this concept and not feel like they're by themselves. And that's what I love about it. I love that this episode, you know, especially with the fact that, you know, the teen is still trying to figure out who he is, and, you know, we're still trying to figure out this whole situation with the witch's road. And I love that we're actually, you know, not only having these problems, but we are also doing it in a way where that these problems are real in some degree. And I love it. I love that it feels real. I don't know what's going to happen next. We will see what the next trial is going to be, and hopefully there's not something too crazy. I pray to God that there's not something insane or like too creepy or too scary, because I don't like dealing with scary stuff or intense subject matters. But yeah, I really liked I like this one in terms of story. Like I said, not a fan of the supernatural elements. The story is getting interesting. It's getting juicy. It's actually getting to be something else that I wasn't expecting. That we are seeing like this WandaVision type idea, and I love it. I love it for all the right reasons, and I can't wait to see more of this. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching my spoiler and non-spoiler review for Agatha All Along, episode 4. If you guys want to see more videos like this, then please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you guys want to follow me on any of my social media, I've got Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, aka X, my Discord server, and my TikTok accounts, which the links will be in the description below. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you all. Stay safe, and I will see you all in the next videos. All right, bye guys.